All right, let's dive into Waaree Energies. They're a big name in solar, and they've got a pretty interesting story. Starting off in instrumentation, they pivoted to solar back in 2007, and now they've gone global, manufacturing panels, and a whole bunch of related tech. So today we're going to unpack what all that means for their business, where the whole solar industry is headed, and of course, what kind of risks they might bump into along the way.
It's kind of wild, isn't it? How solar energy went from like this niche thing to being the most affordable energy source out there globally. Cheaper than coal, oil, gas, anything, really.
It's crazy. I think I read somewhere that the price of solar dropped like 80% in just the last 8 years. No wonder everyone's jumping on board.
Exactly. And the growth projections are insane. We could be looking at something like 7.2 terawatts of global solar capacity by 2030. To put that into perspective, that's like 3 times the entire power generation capacity of the U.S.
Wow, that's a seriously huge number. And a lot of this growth is happening in India, right? I know they've set some pretty ambitious goals for renewable energy.
Oh, absolutely. India is aiming for 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030, which basically means they need to install like 60 to 70 gigawatts of solar power every year. And that's where companies like Waaree Energies come in. They're right in the middle of this whole solar boom.
Speaking of Waaree, they seem to be doing incredibly well. I was reading about their order book. It's massive, like 20 gigawatts. That's a ton of solar panels.
And it's not just the size, it's the variety too. Their customer base is super diverse. It's not just one sector. They've got utilities, commercial businesses, industrial clients, and they're even killing it in the export market. As of September 2024, over 72% of their order book came from overseas. That kind of mix really helps them handle the ups and downs of any one particular market.
So to meet that kind of demand, I'm guessing they've got some serious manufacturing power behind them, right?
Oh, for sure. A strong manufacturing setup is key in this business. And Waaree, they've got it in spades. They've got 12 gigawatts of capacity spread across 3 locations in India: Timnandigram, Chikli, and Surat.
And they're not just sticking to India. I read they just opened up a new 1.3 gigawatt facility in Goa back in July. Plus, they're planning to open another 1.6 gigawatt facility in Texas in February 2025. That's a big jump into the U.S. market.
It is, and it's really interesting, especially with the recent change in leadership there. You might think a Republican state like Texas wouldn't be so into solar, but actually, it's the leading state in the U.S. for solar capacity additions. I guess it just goes to show that wanting cheap energy goes beyond politics.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that clean energy is becoming less about ideology and more about smart economics. But with all this focus on manufacturing, are they just pumping out solar panels? Or are they branching out a bit?
Well, Waaree's actually doing some pretty cool diversification. Yeah. They're not just happy being a solar panel maker. They want to be a major player in the whole energy transition.
Okay, so what does that look like practically? What else are they getting into?
For one thing, they're jumping into the green hydrogen market. They're already making plans to manufacture electrolyzers. Those are essential for making green hydrogen.
Smart move. Green hydrogen is a hot topic right now, and it could really change the game for clean energy.
Exactly. They're also exploring battery energy storage systems. Those are crucial for managing the on and off nature of renewable energy sources like solar and wind. India alone is projected to need like 70 gigawatt hours of battery storage by 2030. It's a huge market opportunity.
So they're basically setting themselves up as a one-stop shop for renewable energy solutions, which makes a lot of sense. They can use their expertise in solar panel manufacturing and apply it to these new areas, almost like building an ecosystem, right?
Yeah, exactly. They can offer these integrated solutions to their clients. That gives them a real edge in this fast-changing market. Plus, they're investing 600 crore rupees in renewable power infrastructure, just further cementing their position.
So all this expansion and diversification sounds great.
Yeah.
But how's it all looking financially? What are their numbers like?
Well, in the second quarter of fiscal year 2025, they pulled in a revenue of 3,663.46 million rupees. That's a modest 2.95% increase year on year.
Modest is right. But I'm guessing there's more to the story than just that top-line number.
You got it. Their earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, or EBITDA for short. That jumped up significantly, like a 14% year-on-year increase to 613.93 million rupees. It's a key indicator of profitability, and it shows they're focused on efficiency.
So they're making more profit on each rupee of sales. That's a good sign, especially as they scale up their operations. What's driving that increase in profitability, though?
One factor is a change in where the revenue is coming from. Last year, about 60% of their revenue came from exports. This year, it flipped. The domestic market now accounts for roughly 70% of their revenue.
Interesting. So they're selling more in India and less overseas?
Yeah.
Is that because of more competition in the export market, maybe?
That's a good question, and some analysts have definitely raised that concern. But Waaree's leadership is saying it's not about competitive pressure. They say it's a strategic move to take advantage of the booming demand in India.
So not losing ground overseas, but gaining ground at home. But if that's the case, why is this shift affecting their profits?
It comes down to pricing. They usually get better prices for their products in the export market. So when a bigger chunk of their revenue comes from the domestic market, where prices are often lower, it can hit their overall profitability.
I see. So while it might be strategic, it's a financial challenge they need to manage carefully. I'm also wondering about their long-term plan here. Are they going to stay focused on the domestic market, or do they think exports will bounce back?
Well, their current order book is still heavily skewed towards exports, with over 72% coming from overseas, which suggests they're expecting a rebound in the coming year. And remember, the solar industry is cyclical. Global market ups and downs can have a big impact on performance. These kinds of shifts aren't unusual.
Okay, that makes sense. But even with a strong order book, there are always risks, especially in a global market like this. What are some of the major challenges or risks that Waaree is facing right now?
One of the big ones is the uncertainty around U.S. trade policies. There's always the chance of anti-dumping duties or countervailing duties on solar products imported from India. That could really hit Waaree's U.S. operations, which they're obviously investing a lot in.
Yeah, those trade policies are a big question mark hanging over their U.S. expansion. And it's not just the U.S., is it? What about competition from other global players?
Right. Southeast Asian manufacturers especially are getting really competitive. They often have lower production costs, so they can offer better prices. That could put pressure on Waaree's market share, especially markets that are sensitive to price.
So they need to keep a close eye on their competition and make sure they're staying ahead. And then there's the constant evolution of technology in this industry. What are they doing to stay innovative and competitive with all that?
That's another big hurdle. The solar tech landscape is always changing. New materials, new manufacturing methods, ever-increasing efficiency standards. It's a fast-paced race. Waaree needs to keep investing in research and development and be ready to adapt quickly to stay ahead of the curve.
Makes sense. They can't just rest on their laurels. They've got to keep pushing the boundaries of what solar tech can do. So we've talked about their expansion plans, their financials, and some of the risks, but I'd love to hear more about how they're tackling these challenges and what their overall strategy looks like.
Well, one key part of their strategy is vertical integration. They're not just making panels, they're getting involved in every stage, from making components to developing whole solar energy solutions.
So they're controlling more of the value chain. That gives them more flexibility and potentially higher profit margins. Smart move.
Totally. And they're also focusing on building strong relationships with their customers, trying to become trusted partners, not just suppliers, by offering a full range of services and custom solutions.
Sounds like they're really going for a sustainable business model. Thinking long-term?
Exactly. They're not just chasing quick wins. They're thinking about how to position themselves for success in a rapidly changing energy landscape. And that's a key takeaway here. The world is moving towards cleaner, more sustainable energy sources. Waaree's not just riding that wave, they're actively shaping it.
That's a great point. They're not just reacting to market trends, they're anticipating them and building a business that's aligned with the future of energy. And that brings us to a really important question for our listener.
What really strikes me is how Waaree's strategy just shows how connected the global energy market is. Their choices are affected by everything, from U.S. trade policies to competition from Southeast Asia,
Yeah, it's like this giant game of chess with all these players making moves and trying to figure out what everyone else is going to do.
Exactly. And Waaree's playing it smart, diversifying their products, expanding into new markets, building those strategic partnerships.
Right, so they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. They're spreading the risk and creating multiple ways to grow. But it also makes you wonder, with so much going on, what's next for a company like Waaree?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The energy landscape is always changing. It's tough to say for sure what the future holds, but I think it's safe to say that companies that can move quickly, innovate, and adapt, those are the ones that are going to thrive.
And that seems to be Waaree's approach, right? They're not just sticking with what they know. They're always looking at new technologies and ways of doing business.
Absolutely. Their move into green hydrogen and battery storage is a perfect example. They're realizing that the future of energy isn't just solar panels. It's about creating a whole system of clean energy solutions.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a second. We talked about all the good stuff, but what are some potential downsides? What risks might they run into?
Well, the biggest risk, I'd say, is execution. They've got these huge expansion plans. But can they actually make it happen? Can they build all these new facilities on time and within budget? Can they find and keep the right people to run these complex businesses? Those are some big questions.
Right, and even if they do everything perfectly, there's always the chance of something unexpected happening. Like, what if there's a massive technological breakthrough that makes their current tech obsolete?
Right.
Or what if the global economy takes a hit and demand for solar energy plummets?
Those are valid concerns, and that's why it's so important for Waaree to have a solid plan for managing risk. They need to keep an eye on the market, anticipate potential threats, and have backup plans ready. They can't afford to be caught off guard.
So it's not just about having a great vision, it's about having the ability to actually make it happen and the foresight to handle any challenges that pop up.
Exactly. And that brings us back to their leadership team. Do they have the experience, the skills, and the vision to steer this company through whatever comes next? Only time will tell.
But they seem to have a pretty impressive track record so far, don't you think?
They do. They've built a successful global business in a pretty short amount of time, and they've shown they're willing to adapt and innovate.
So they've got the momentum, but they can't get complacent. This industry is constantly changing, and they're going to have to keep pushing to stay ahead.
For sure, and that's what makes this so interesting. We're seeing a company at a really crucial point in its journey. They could become a major force in the global energy transition, but they've got big challenges ahead of them, too. It'll be fascinating to see how it all plays out.
You know, it strikes me that Waaree's story is kind of a reflection of the bigger picture, the challenges and opportunities facing the whole world right now. We're all trying to figure out how to create a more sustainable future, and companies like Waaree are leading the way.
That's a great point. Their success or failure will impact the entire energy sector.
And it's bigger than just energy, isn't it? It's about a more sustainable economy, a healthier planet, a better future for everyone.
Exactly. Waaree's story isn't just about solar panels and profits. It's a story about innovation, resilience, and the power of human ingenuity. It's about tackling some of the biggest challenges we're facing today.
And that's why this deep dive has been so insightful.
Yeah.
It's not just about understanding one company. It's about understanding the forces that are shaping our world and the potential we have to create a better future.
And that's what makes this conversation so important.
And before we wrap up, there's one more thing I wanted to touch on. Earlier, we talked about Waaree shifting towards the domestic market in India.
Right, and how that's affected their profitability.
Exactly. And I'm wondering, is this just a temporary thing? Or is it a sign of something bigger? Could we see other solar companies doing the same thing?
It's a great question. On the one hand, India is a massive market with huge potential for solar energy growth. So for Waaree, focusing there makes sense.
And with government policy supporting renewables, it seems like a smart strategic move.
Absolutely. But on the other hand, the global market is still crucial for solar companies. That's where a lot of the innovation is happening and where the competition is the fiercest.
So they can't afford to ignore the global market, even with strong domestic growth.
Exactly. It's a balancing act. They need to figure out how to take advantage of emerging markets like India while still staying strong in the global market.
It's a challenge, but it's an opportunity too. The companies that can handle this changing landscape, those are the ones that will define the future of solar.
And that brings us to a thought-provoking question for our listeners. We've been talking about Waaree's journey, their big plans for growth and how the solar industry is always shifting. It makes you wonder, what do you think the next 5 to 10 years hold for them? Can they really balance growing in India with their global ambitions? How will they deal with potential trade wars and all that competition?
It's a lot to think about, and I think it really highlights something important we've seen today. The solar industry isn't just about the technology. It's about geopolitics, it's about economics, even social change. Waaree's success is going to depend on understanding all that and making the right decisions based on that.
And that's what makes it so interesting to watch, right? We're talking about a company that's right at the front of this global energy transition, a transition that could completely reshape our world.
Exactly. It's bigger than just business. It's about creating a more sustainable future for everyone.
Couldn't agree more. It's a story worth following.
Definitely. And it's a story that's still being written.
Yeah. So stay curious, keep exploring, and let's see where it all goes.
And that wraps up our deep dive into Waaree Energies and the future of solar. Hope you enjoyed the ride with us.
Until next time, keep those brains energized. And remember, the future is looking bright